it's not just GNOME and KDE. Almost everyone is moving towards a Wayland future. Now, I know for some people, this is really uncomfortable. They don't want it to happen. They don't want to use Wayland, and that is totally fine. There are always going to be distros out there as long as somebody is working on the code that support X11, that ship an X11 desktop, and you can work on X11 yourself as well. But even projects like XFCE are working on Wayland support. About half a year ago, XFWL4, the roadmap for an XFCE Wayland compositor, this is the direction that XFCE is taking. There have been these prior efforts beforehand, some different ideas about how this could be done. There was this other compositor being worked on. There was this third-party thing. People have talked about the idea of taking an existing compositor and then building the tooling around that compositor. But this solution here by Brian Tarracone, who's been working on the project on and off for about 22 years now, not on this compositor, but on XFCE in general, this is built off of Smithy. This is the same library being used by both Cosmic and also Neri, and I know for some people, it being in Rust is a problem as well, but yes, this is also written in Rust. Now, about a week ago, we got another announcement, XFWL4's first preview release. Now, the term release is, I would say, a little bit debatable here. Yes, it has been tagged, and yes, you can run it. However, as of the recording of this, actually doing so is a little bit of a challenge. A common thing in XFCE is to rely on these very, very new XFCE dependencies. So new, in fact, that as of the recording of this, I don't think any mainstream distros actually ship the dependencies. I've tried Arch, I've looked on package search tools and various places. I think Magia might have some packages, possibly, and a couple of other random places, but it's a bit of a pain right now to get working. You'll be looking to grab the devel tags of things like libxfce4ui, libxfconf, XFCE4settings, and xfdesktop. Now, if you're running XFCE, you probably have the non-devel versions already installed, so good luck actually working out what you need to uninstall to deal with any of the conflicts that are going to arise here. The build process is documented. If you go over to the Git repo, it is going to explain how to build it, and you can go to each of the individual components and look at how to build each of those as well. My recommendation, though, is unless you want to deal with messing around with package dependencies, messing around with Meson builds, messing around with weird conflicts, most people, the average XFCE user, probably shouldn't run this yet. My recommendation is, unless you want to get involved in development of this project, wait for some sort of testing ISO, some sort of testing environment, some easily, nicely packaged way to go and run it. If you look around just a little bit, you will come across XFWL4 Devel on the AUR. This is a perfectly fine package. It's not malware. This is actually the package you expect it to be. Again, if you're running any XFCE4 components, anything that also needs to be a devel tag is going to conflict, and you will have to manually resolve those. Also, some of the devel packages also on the AUR are not packaged correctly and don't have some of their dependencies listed. So, you're going to have to go and manually resolve any of those Meson problems, so have fun with that. With that being said, here is a TTY. Why do we have a TTY? Well, last night on my second machine, I went through the hassle of getting all of that working. So now, it should just run. If we run XFWL4, don't break on me now, there it is. If you daily drive XFCE, there's going to be a lot of things here which seem immediately a bit off. For example, the workspace switcher up here doesn't have a little graphical display of the workspace. Right now, that currently doesn't actually work. But if I go and open up a terminal, you know, it works totally fine. We can open up the terminal. My mouse speed is much higher than it should be because, we'll get to that in just a bit. If we try to open up Thunar, works totally fine. Let's open up some random other application. I don't actually have a browser installed on this system. Well, I can't open up a browser, but what if we click it? Yeah, we actually don't have a browser installed on this system. Okay, that's entirely my bad. This is a very, very clean install. Let's go and open up About XFCE, and our wallpaper crashed. That's another bug. Sometimes that happens as well. Yeah, that... I thought that only happened after you changed the wallpaper. Turns out it just crashes randomly. Either way, windowing system is Wayland. If we go into our settings, there are going to be a lot of things here which work, kinda. At least their interfaces do work. Whether their settings work or not is kind of another question entirely. Let's see if we can actually change the theme. We can change the theme. That is actually working, but it's not ready to daily drive. You can use it, and this works way better than you might initially think. It's gonna be buggy. It's gonna be very, very buggy, as you just saw from the entire desktop. I actually can't even select the desktop. I think the entire desktop itself crashed now. But it's functional. It's usable. It is making progress. And over time, this is going to actually get there. Also, if you want to run it in a way that is not going to be a nightmare, let's say, where it crashes and you lose all your work, if we do XFWL4 -- help, it can actually be run as an embedded client on another desktop. So you can run it inside as a Wayland client, you can run it as an X11 client, and this is going to make it a lot easier to test. So if you want to help out with development, this is probably a better way to do so. Right now, it's not necessarily stable enough to actually dog food as a developer. If you know where the crashes are, which I don't know where the crashes are, you probably can avoid them, but it's still a little bit early to actually use as a regular user. I'm just going to leave this running in the background. I don't know if it has a memory leak, and if I leave it long enough, it's just going to crash. I'm just going to leave it here with a bunch of terminal windows open, and we'll see if it crashes by the end of the video. Let us go back over to my main input over here, and there we go. Let us take a look at the post about this. The end goal of XFWL4 is to behave as closely as possible to an XFCE desktop running on an X server. Ideally, users can switch between the two without even knowing there's a difference. This is not exactly, but kind of the state that desktops like KDE have been in. Yes, there's been a bit of bit rot on the X11 side. Yes, some things have been breaking. Yes, certain features have not yet been implemented on the Wayland side. But for the most part, your settings are carried over, your general workflow is going to be the same, it is not crashing in really obvious and really stupid ways. That's the state that XFCE wants to be in. In reality, of course, it won't be quite that seamless, and there's still more work to be done to get as close as possible to that ideal. This is a first solid cut at it, at the very least. And from my brief experience trying it, it is solid. It is functional. Yes, the wallpaper did crash. The desktop does not work. But your applications were staying up fine, you could continue running things, and it was mostly working. Very, very, very far from perfect, but that is why it is a preview, an alpha, not a stable release that anyone sensible should be daily driving. The issue track will give you a decent idea of things that are not implemented yet, or are known to be broken. Here is a list of notable things that won't work, so you aren't surprised. Again, notable, this is not an exhaustive list. First thing regarding my mouse. The mouse and touchpad settings dialog, it just doesn't work at all. If we click it, it literally just doesn't open. It doesn't work whatsoever. It will remember the settings you have set from the X11 side, but you would need to go and open up the X11 side. This is entirely an issue of a protocol which has not yet been implemented. It is documented, there is a spec here, but it is not actually put into the code yet. As for the workspaces setting dialog, it, at the very least, opens. However, the settings we have here don't actually do anything. They're just They're just numbers you can set. You can set the number of workspaces, so that's something. If we go to 0, does that break it? We can't go to 0. Good. But the margins, they don't work. Currently, they're still using their old library, libwnck. The support for this is in libxfce for windowing, and this supports both X11 and Wayland. So moving away from the X11 only library to a more generic library that can support both backends. XF Desktop's minimized icon view and the middle click window menu. This is going to involve implementing some protocols which have been documented. This first one, this exposes more state and controls for pages/taskbar apps to be able to implement. I also want to add something to that protocol that links WLR foreign top-level management and ext workspace so apps can know what workspace a top level is on, what workspace a window is on. Top level is like Wayland terminology for window. Why it's like that, read the Wayland book. Not important. And implement support for XFCE foreign top-level management private. This will add support for more window states and actions to XFW window and will associate XFW window instances with their XFW workspace. So you could restore the window and it goes back to the correct workspace. Page your thumbnails in the panel. I think this is referring to the workspace thumbnails. As I showed you, they do not work yet. Taskbar apps can only change maximize, minimize, and full screen state. This one here links to the same issues we had for this one up here. Keyboard shortcuts for application/application window switching, regular all window cycling works fine. A lot of the keyboard-driven shortcuts currently do not work. The former cycles through only the main window of each application, skipping secondary windows. The latter cycles through only the windows of the current client. Most all apps will not be able to restore their window positions or workspace on startup. This isn't just an issue with XFCE, this is a problem that is being worked on for basically every compositor out there. This is going to involve the XDG session management protocol, and whilst this protocol has been merged into Wayland upstream, it's also going to be a matter of getting it merged into the toolkits and then getting it merged into the desktops. I believe KDE has it merged in the desktop. I don't know if Qt has it merged yet. I think they do. But that's still not going to help for GTK applications. I think they're working on the protocol. I'm not sure about other toolkits like Iced and various other things. Basically, getting window restoration working on Wayland is going to be an effort that everybody needs to work on. Thankfully, this is one of those places where pretty much everyone agrees. But, as I said earlier, this is by far an exhaustive list. If we just look at the work items on XFWL4, there is already 35 items in here. Some of these we have not talked about. Some of these you're probably not going to run into as a daily driving problem, but are issues that need to be resolved nonetheless. Some of these issues are going to be performance related. Some of these are going to be fundamental crashes that break the entire environment. For example, XFWL4 sometimes exits after virtual console change, so if you change your TTY, sometimes it just crashes. Now, despite what you may have heard, most of the problems that exist here are not fundamental flaws in the way that Wayland works. Now, don't get me wrong, there are still fundamental issues that do exist. There are protocols that have not yet been ironed out. There are still problems that need to be discussed. But most of what is going on here isn't that. Most of what is going on here is this is a really new project that is being developed by basically one person. There are occasional other patches from other people, but most of the work is being done by Brian Tarracone, who is not, okay, I know before you send me a DM, who is not Vaxry in Hyperland, who spent multiple years, I don't know how, 30 hours a day working on that project. Most people want to do other things outside of just writing code, so it is taking time to get there. And yes, with Wayland, it did take us about 14 to 16 years, up until the past couple of years, for Wayland to actually get to a state where it is legitimately good and actually worth daily driving. That doesn't mean it is going to take that long for XFCE or for Cinnamon or for any of these other desktops to get into that state. Most of that time wasn't development time. Most of that time was waiting on dumb, petty nonsense to be argued out. Bike shedding over protocol design, debating whether or not a protocol should even exist in the first place when every sane person says, oh, this is a feature that we've had for the past 30 years, maybe it's a good idea to keep the feature. Yeah, but Wayland's new. What if we just didn't have the feature? What if we rethought the feature from the ground up? Thankfully, a lot of that really annoying nonsense has been ironed out at this point. Most of that does not need to be rehashed. What XFCE needs to do is just implement the protocols that resulted of that. Some of those protocol discussions are still going on, and some of them have taken multiple years, but thankfully a lot of the really bad ones have been dealt with now. So getting XFCE into a state that, say, KDE is currently in, that's not going to take the amount of time it took KDE to get there. XFCE doesn't have to spend any time arguing about session restoration and how it should be done and the limitations of it and what possible other things you can glue onto session restoration. They don't have to argue about window positioning. The protocol for that has been merged. Somewhere down the line, if they want to do HDR, that problem has been solved. They're not planning on doing it just yet, but it is considered. All of this big stuff that took so long is just there now. It just exists. Even with that being the case, it's still probably going to take a couple of years to get XFWL4 into a state where XFCE users are firstly willing to try it out, secondly, willing to try it out daily driving, and thirdly, willing to use it over the X11 version. For a long time, it is probably going to be in a similar state to Cinnamon's Wayland session, where it does exist, it's experimental, you can try it out, it's just very far from ready. But this is a labor issue, this is a coding issue, this is a time issue, not a fundamental issue with the idea. Now, over on the FAQ, we have a bit more context on the project. Will XFWL4 behave just like XFWM4? I changed the name. This is such a nightmare for me to pronounce. You have no idea how many takes it took me to say this sentence. As much as possible, yes. In reality, that won't quite be the case. Some desktop environment concepts are not standardized on Wayland and aren't implementable. It will take time to achieve feature parity with XFWM4, so some things might be missing for a while. And while I'll do my best, I'm sure I'll make mistakes and some things won't be the same, but I'm happy to try and fix any cases of that if it's brought to my attention. Now, the one I did want to come here for. Why Rust? The usual reasons. Not having to deal with memory safety issues or data races, strong expressive type system, algebraic data types, ability to sprinkle functional programming throughout, strong community, etc. But mainly I, Brian, just prefer it over C, and I'm not interested in starting a new C project. I no longer have the patience for tracking down segfaults and UAFs and memory leaks when I can use a language that I like that offers similar performance and doesn't let me compile programs with those kinds of bugs, at least not without me explicitly asking it to. Some people misinterpret this to mean, oh, Rust developers think if the code compiles it has no bugs. No Rust developer in the entire world has ever said that. However, there are certain classes of bugs which are not possible if you have a memory-safe language, not just C. Basically any language that isn't C. Since refactoring XFWM4 to turn it into a Wayland compositor wasn't feasible, and I was going to have to start from scratch, I decided to take the opportunity to start with a language I think is better suited for the task. And whilst you may disagree with the choice of Rust here, he actually doesn't care about the discussion, and any discussion about it he thinks is boring and is not worth his time. Is all of XFCE being written in Rust? No, definitely not. Rewrite it in Rust is, in my opinion, an unproductive use of time outside of some special cases. Not that I look down on anyone who wants to do that in their spare time. Everyone can enjoy their time however they want. For some extra detail here, if you're not aware, XFCE is made up of quite a few different components, each of which are separate programs. That is part of the reason why it is a nightmare to build if you want to go and build it from source. The only one that is being replaced / rewritten for Wayland is XFWM4. The rest, fortunately, can or have been modified to serve double duty and can run under both X11 and Wayland without needing major fundamental changes. Those other components are written in C and nothing is changing there. You can actually run the XFCE session with Hyperland. Now, I wouldn't recommend doing so. There's a lot of things that are gonna be broken there, but you can do it. Why wasn't it feasible to base this work on the existing XFWM4 code? This was tried back in 2024 and turned out to be really hard. He spent about 3 weeks on this and learned a number of things. I was nowhere near done, and there would still be months of work to do, even before writing any functional Wayland code. At this point, the diff was already at around 20,000 lines changed, and with that, you could have a functional Wayland compositor already without having to go and brute force it into another project. Several times during the process, despite a high level of care, I broke it. Crashes, broken windowing behavior. I wasn't feeling confident that the result would be high quality and regression free. It's probably easier to write a Wayland compositor that you later turn into an X11 window manager than do it in reverse. XFWM4's design relies heavily on GTK/glib main loop and use it in some unusual but quite clever ways. Much of this is fundamentally incompatible with how WRoot and a WL display server need to be driven. Solving these problems in XFWM4 lead to 2 parallel duplicative code paths, one handling X11, the other handling Wayland in a confusing manner, or B, a major refactoring of how XFWM4 works that almost guarantee regressions and new bugs. I really wanted to use XFWM4 as it's an extremely high quality piece of code that's been battle tested over decades. But I could only conclude that it wasn't going to be the best, least risky option. Also, if you do it separate from XFWM4, you keep that project clean. So for a long time, if people want to keep using that version and have a version they know works like it should be working, they can keep doing so. You can do XFWL4 over here. That can be as buggy as it needs to be as you're working on things, and everyone else can keep getting updates, can keep working on the X11 version without any sort of disruption. XFCE has had a very long history, and whilst it has massively fallen out of popularity in the last couple of years, with many people moving to projects like KDE, GNOME, Hyperland, and many others, I have no doubt that in a couple of years, we'll be seeing XFCE on the other side of this with a good, solid, working Wayland compositor. I was editing the video, and I almost forgot to check in on XFWL4. I don't know when this happened. I don't know why this happened, but I guess at some point it must have crashed just sitting in the background. So let me know your thoughts down below. If you liked the video, go like the video, go subscribe as well. And if you really like the video, actually firstly, let me know your thoughts down below to say that. If you really like the video and you want to become one of these amazing people over here, check out the Patreon, Scribes, Daily Bureau Pay, linked in the description down below. That's going to be it for me, and time to change the name to WFCE.